Hallo du hinterm Bildschirm und herzlich willkommen heute zu einem Interview mit Victoria Aveyard. Oh my god. This interview is going to be in English because obviously she's from the US.
Yes, and we don't speak anything but English.
And we'll just put some German subtitles in it so all of you guys can understand that. Thank you so much for being here. It really is an honor to do this interview with you.
I'm so excited to be here. I love this.
You've been here before in 2015, right?
Yes, it's been really amazing because I came here right after the first Red Queen book released, and now I'm here for the last one, which just came out 2 days ago.
Yeah.
So it feels like a nice little circle. You guys have been my good luck charm.
As you said, in 2015 it was your first book, and now it's the conclusion to the series. How does that feel? Is there anything different, like with your schedule and stuff?
The schedule hasn't changed too much, especially for here. It's just I know what I can do and how to make things easy for me and how to make things easy for everybody else. I know exactly how to, organize a line and what we're doing at signings to make it go as smoothly as possible, and how to talk to people in a way that is friendly, but also, sometimes people don't want to talk to authors. They get a little nervous. We're nervous too. So I've found my tactics for getting people to chat with me while I'm signing their books.
But your schedule is crazy, right?
Yeah, it's this year has been really amazing in that I've done 4 or 5 international tours now, and I'd never imagined that was something that I would ever do, let alone be part of my life to the point where I'm almost used to it. It's very strange.
Yeah, I can imagine. As I said before, now it's the conclusion to the series, and did you know from the start how it would all end, or was there something that went completely different?
Yeah, there wasn't anything. When I started writing the series, I knew kind of where I wanted certain pieces to end up. I didn't know how I was going to get to the end of the physical arc, but I knew from more of an emotional standpoint where I wanted people to be. When I start writing an actual book, though, I always know the beginning and I always know the end. So every time I started each piece, I knew where it was going. I really figured out the end specifically in the middle of Glass Sword, the second book. But up till then, it was a hazy idea and just kind of throwing things in that direction and hoping they could all connect in the end.
But did fan reception somehow change the course of the story? Like when someone said, oh, I don't like that character so much that you kind of wrote him out?
Not necessarily. There were definitely things that people liked that I knew I had to play up more. So the earrings especially were something people really latched onto. So I made more mention of the earrings as the series went on. There were never any plot points or specific character moments that I changed because of reader reaction. My favorite part is seeing someone react to the book and think, oh, I really dislike this character. And me knowing, especially with the character Evangeline, that I was going to do whatever I could to make you like her later.
Evangeline is my favorite character, by the way.
Thank you, yay. Because so many people hated her after the first book, and I knew in the back of my head, okay, I know what's going to happen with her later, and I think you're going to change your mind. That was really, really fun for me. And the same for Maven. So many people were like, oh, I love him, and I knew opinions were going to change.
We are going to go into a bit spoilery territory, maybe, but I will put a warning right here somewhere on the screen so you can just skip that question in case you haven't read the 4th part yet, which you definitely should. We were talking about Evangeline, and she becomes a POV character at the end. What other POVs have you toyed with while writing this story? Have there been characters that you wanted to do a POV from, but you didn't?
Yes. One that people specifically asked for a lot was Farley, and I never did her POV in the main series. She's got a novella, but I never found a moment where her point of view was specifically the one I needed in a certain moment. I thought about using her in King's Cage instead of Cameron, but I knew that I really wanted to highlight Cameron because she is so similar to Mare, but makes different choices and is kind of stronger than her. They're both girls who have come from similar situations, who are having something incredible happen to them, have discovered that they have these lethal powers that they can use to change the world. And while Mare sort of lets herself be lost to her ability, Cameron figures out how to control it and how to not let it control her, and she kind of is bigger than Mare in that way. And we're working through her arc and her different emotional solutions was really, really fascinating for me.
Did these POVs also come because the series got more complex? Because you wanted to highlight different parts of the story that you couldn't just by using Mare?
while I knew the big beats of every single character, it was in the third book where I really knew I have to split out from just Mare because she's physically in a different place than half of the cast, and I knew I couldn't just tell half of the story. So then it was, I knew where it was going, and I just had to figure out which lenses I wanted on it, and I knew I wanted to get into Evangeline, and then in the fourth book, there are some more point of views that come in.
I was so happy about Evangeline's point of view, if I might say. The fourth book is, in my opinion, the most complex one, and the books get more complex over the course of the series.
Yes.
Is there a book in the series that was for you personally the hardest to write?
Probably the second one, and I think the second one is the weakest of the books too.
Really?
But the middle of Glass Sword was really difficult for me. I wasn't quite sure how to get to where I was going because I knew the end and I knew the beginning, and the middle was always my jumbly spot where I'm sort of grasping in the dark for answers. But I got through it and I sent it on its way eventually. That one I needed a lot of heavy lifting and editing, and later on I had more of a handle on the characters in the world. And also it's really important to figure out what you can't address and what you can't change. And writing the fourth book especially, because it was the ending, there were so many times where I had to tell myself it's not going to be perfect, every loose end is not going to be tied up, the greats don't do that either, you're going to be okay, you just have to get to the end and then fix it. So that's how I finished eventually.
So you just said that you think the second one was the weakest.
Yes.
Do you have a favorite book in the series, or is that like picking your favorite child?
It's interesting because I have favorite moments. One of my most favorite moments is the end of the second book. So while it is the weakest book, I loved the ending of that book. So it's more, I think, of pieces that I loved versus a particular book that I loved.
Yeah. Also, you were talking about the novellas just a bit. You just announced there are going to be upcoming novellas. Can you tell us about that, or is that all top secret?
It's not top secret, but it is a spoiler. So the short stories, for the most part, revolve around the people who survived. What is this? The fourth one?
It's the fourth one.
This is the fourth one? Yeah, I can't tell from the back because I don't read German. But yeah, it's the people who survived this book and what's happening a couple of months afterwards, and it follows them for a little bit of more time. There's also a good amount of contextual evidence. I had a really fun time writing more academic stuff. So there's information about the kings of Norda and their history, and there's family trees, and there's like little notes from Julian as he's going through his research, which has been really fun for me to design because I'm a nerd. So I was just, you know, what would I be doing, or what would I be compiling if I was sort of trying to figure out what's going on in my life and history that I have just witnessed and beforehand.
Well, the ending of Warstorm was a bit controversial. I mean, you just said that you don't tie up all the loose ends.
Right.
Are you saying, okay, just to say what you want to say.
Yes, so something that a lot of people, and it's interesting because I get this split a lot and a lot of different things in the book. People who say I loved this character or I hate this character. People who say I loved this ending or I didn't like this ending. People who think the ending is very clear and people who think the ending is ambiguous. Personally, I think from my standpoint, and mine is biased because I know a little bit more than everybody else, I think that the ending of the fourth book is very clear as to what happens with two specific characters. But a lot of other people want to know for sure and specifically see what happens next. And for me, I always appreciate when books and series that I love leave the door open at the end. Because I feel like if you come to such a direct ending, it's almost like it's over. And I am so hesitant to leave places that I love. So I wanted to leave the door open. I also think it makes it feel more real that like this world is still going on after the books have ended. You know, we're closing the book, but this is still happening. So I didn't want to end it in a really final way because I didn't want people to feel like it was gone.
I think it wouldn't be true to the story at all. That's one
and
other
they're
thing.
at the end of the day, they're teenagers too, so it's nowhere near the end of their stories.
Are you leaving the door open for a full sequel, like for a fifth
Not
book?
for a long time.
No.
I'm really excited to get to work on my next project, which I've been thinking of for a few years now.
Can you tell us about that?
All I can really say is it's a new young adult fantasy series, and it's more high fantasy than Red Queen was. So it's got more of a historic setting. It's a bit of a quest.
That's nice. You have a lot of tragic characters in your books, like Maven especially. He's really controversial,
yes.
and Evangeline also, who's a lesbian. And also it's a dystopia.
Yeah.
Do you feel like you have a responsibility for young readers to like tell a story, and what do you want to say with your story?
Yeah, I think at first, before you can say anything of value, you have to make sure that what you're giving them, it's in a pill that's a little more easy to swallow. So you're always entertaining, you're always interesting first, because if you're saying something really valuable but it's boring, most people aren't going to metabolize it. It's not going to stick. So I am always trying to make sure that what I'm saying isn't too heavy-handed or too preachy, and that's what you can get in genre, in science fiction and fantasy. You can really make great commentaries on your world because you're sort of dressing it up as something else. Harry Potter does that very well. But yeah, I especially after the first book, when I published that, I had no idea, what publishing was like, what it was like to have a book out there, what it was like to have readers. I never thought people would connect to anything I wrote or care. And then you sort of understand the responsibility you have to reflect the world accurately. There's a lot of, especially in the United States right now, there's a lot of very political stuff going on, and people who are choosing to not include that in their book and saying, oh, my work isn't political, and you're like, well, saying that your work isn't political is a political thing to say. So choosing to remove it from your books, even if it's a fantasy, even if it's a historical, is sort of untrue, and it makes your world feel a little less real. And when you're writing something in fantasy, you want it to feel real, even if it's amazing and extraordinary. Your readers can't connect to it if it doesn't feel like there's something there that's anchoring them and something they can understand because it's happening in their life. It's also fantastic for readers to see themselves in books, and I do as best I can, and we're always improving on that front. I think all writers are constantly learning how best to reflect their readers and how best to reflect the world as it is versus whatever we want to see. Yeah.
That's really nice. Do you feel like, because this is a fantasy, that you have like, well, how do I put this? Do you have more possibilities to like use metaphors and to talk about political things, maybe like underneath?
Yes.
Is that a conscious decision to use fantasy?
Yes, and that was a conscious decision from Red Queen. I mean, it's a book that's talking about, what is essentially racism, what is class division, what is, unfair government and tyrannical dictators. But people didn't really start to push back on it until after the third book came out, which was right after Donald Trump was elected, and then suddenly I had a good amount of readers who were telling me, well, these books are too political now and you've let politics come in too much. And I would say,
but it was
these
like
books were written before he was elected and before the campaign. So if you're reading somebody in real life in this fictional dictator, that's on you, because I modeled it on historic dictators, but they all follow the same patterns. So,
has there ever been anything that your publishers didn't want to have in your book?
No, my publishers have been fantastic about that. The only thing we ever had a little pushback on is it is a fade to black scene, but there is a lead into a sex scene in the third book where I was told, okay, do we want to make this so clear? And I said yes, and they were like, okay.
Okay, let's do this.
But there's never been any political or representation issues where someone has said you cannot have a character be this or you cannot talk about this. The short stories, I wrote a bit of a diatribe on climate change and how much it's going to affect the world, because I was talking about the history of Red Queen, which is in fact our future. So I had, not fun, but I was researching a lot of catastrophic climate disasters that could possibly happen to us, and started writing them as if they were a history. So I was like, okay, cool, great, this is in our future now.
What about the German book? Are you hands-on on cover design or something, not just with the German books, but also other parts of the world?
I definitely, because there's a point where I don't have as good of a feel for a foreign audience as my foreign publishers would. I've definitely had covers where I've said, oh, maybe this or maybe that, because I have a specific kind of taste, but then it's, well, this is what works for this audience, this is what works in this country, this is what's going to sell the book, this is what's going to get a good placement. So it's definitely a push and pull of me saying, oh, this fits the book, and them saying, well, this is how we can make that work for us. So it's definitely something where I get input, but I also don't really know what's going to work best.
You need to trust.
Yeah, yes,
the
exactly.
publishers.
And my publishing team in Germany has been fantastic. It's really nice to have the same team throughout an entire series, which can sometimes be rare because in publishing people move around. So it's the same team as when I first visited here 3 years ago as I am now. So I actually get to see familiar faces. I've been in this room before. It's really cool to have that kind of stability.
Yeah. And how about the movie adaptation? Is there something in the works? And also concerning this, do you want to have like more say in the book to movie adaptation?
Yeah. That's another thing where I know where I'm needed and I know where I need to take a step back because I have a background in film. So it's nice to know, this is where I'm going to be in the way, but this is where I can actually have input. And we do have a film in the works, and they've been really fantastic with me and keeping me in the loop because a lot of authors sometimes see nothing. They never see a script. They never talk to anybody. They've been great about getting notes from me and getting me scripts so that I can tell them this is right or this is going to be different down the line, or maybe we should do this, or I really like this change. It's interesting with adaptation because a lot of readers will tell me, oh, don't let them make it if it's not going to be faithful, if it's not going to be 100% the same. And unfortunately, that doesn't work.
Yeah, you need to change certain parts.
There are things that work on the page that don't work on the screen, and vice versa. So I always say I'm on the side of a good story. If we can adapt this into an amazing movie, even if it's not all faithful, I don't care.
As long as it's good.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, as long as it's good.
You once said in an interview that's really interesting that you don't dreamcast. You don't cast you because it's a problem.
Yeah, and it's not how I...
Ooh, they're excited as well.
What's happening?
They're excited for the movie.
Who is it? Yeah, I don't think of my characters that way as much. And I know that readers don't do that either. So I'm really hesitant to ever throw my full weight behind saying, oh yes, this is the person. Because I don't want to affect a reader's image of a character. There are fan casts that I see on Tumblr or Twitter. People will send them to me and I'll be like, oh yeah, that's a good one. I never thought of that. I also am not terribly tapped into who are the teen actors right now. So all of my understanding is, who is on a show like The Vampire Diaries or something, and they're all 20 years too old. So anyone I would say would probably be too old for the part anyways.
But one question, if you could cast yourself as one character, who would it be?
No, I don't even want a cameo. I would hate that.
You don't?
No.
So yeah, my last question actually was the future, but you already told us that there's something else in the works.
Yes,
so
and I can't wait to share it. I've been working on it intermittently with the short stories and world building mostly, working on a map this week that I post a little bit on my Instagram stories and people are like, what is this? And I'm like, I don't know.
Cool. Yeah. Thank you so much for being here. Red Green is now out in Germany as well. You can read it right now, and we look forward to everything that's coming up by you. Yes. And thank you so much for being here.
Thank you.
And
so
thank
much
you for watching, and we'll see you next time. Bye.